They said, "You'll just slow us down at the airport." And I nodded, like I didn't hear my own daughter disinvite me from the trip I paid for. The kettle was still warm when they left the table. Sarah with her clipped, organized tone, Michael with that fake chuckle he uses when pretending to be polite. My tea had gone cold by then, but I didn't move. I sat there staring at the faint ring it left on the wood. That old oak table has heard everything in this house. Baby laughter, teenage fights, funeral plans. It didn't deserve that either. They were going to Florence, a family vacation. One of those bucket list trips that Sarah kept talking about since her 40th. "You deserve it too, Mom," she'd said when we first planned it. "It's time we did something special. All of us together." That was 5 months ago. I paid for the flights, for the hotel too, a renovated villa outside the city. There was a spreadsheet involved. Michael loved spreadsheets. He made it sound like they were contributing, but when the final numbers came in, guess who covered the gaps? I didn't mind. Honestly, I didn't. I've always helped where I could. Paid their down payment when they bought their house. Covered orthodontics for Olivia, the eldest. When Noah needed tutoring, I handled it. Birthdays, Christmas, dance camps, the leaking roof, their dog's surgery. I did it all because I thought that's what mothers do. What grandmothers do. Keep the lights on behind the scenes so their children can shine out front. And yet, 3 days before our departure, Sarah looked me in the eye and said, "It's just, Mom, the transfers, the walking, the airports. It'll be too much for you." I didn't answer right away. Not because I was shocked. Not anymore. But because I suddenly remembered a conversation from 20 years ago. Sarah had just had Olivia. She was exhausted, scared, too proud to say it. I moved in for 3 weeks, cooked, cleaned, rocked the baby at 3 a.m. Michael had praised me to his mother on the phone. I overheard him. We couldn't do it without her. Funny how that changed. I stood up from the table, walked to the kitchen sink, and turned the faucet on just to hear something real. I watched the water run until it turned cold. No one asked me how I felt. No one asked if I was okay with being left behind. They called it just for this trip, as if rejection dressed in soft words didn't still wound. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan. I remembered the email confirmation with the flight details. I had it saved in my inbox. And I remembered something else, too. The password to the airline account. I was the one who booked all the tickets, my credit card, my name. I got up, turned on the lamp, and opened my laptop. The login still worked. I found the itinerary right where I'd left it. 4 tickets, Florence via JFK, departure Friday, 7:40 a.m. Seats confirmed, baggage included, travel insurance purchased, every detail intact. I scrolled slowly, rereading the names. Sarah M. Reynolds, Michael Reynolds, Olivia Reynolds, Noah Reynolds and me, Martha Blake, passenger 5. Status: not traveling. They'd removed me. I don't know when it happened. Maybe that afternoon while I was out buying travel-sized toiletries and motion sickness bands for the kids. I even bought noise-canceling headphones for Sarah. "You'll need them," I'd said. "They say the Florence airport is noisy." She smiled, distracted. Probably had already deleted me from the manifest, but they didn't cancel my card. That was their mistake. I closed the tab, walked back to the living room, and sat on the couch. The same couch where I'd rocked Sarah through chickenpox and where Olivia once spilled juice and sobbed like she'd broken something sacred. That fabric still held stains from real life. Then I looked at the printed itinerary on the fridge, the one Olivia had decorated with stickers. Florence trip, it said in bright purple ink, with hearts and stars, and my name, still there in her handwriting. Olivia thought I was coming. I think maybe, deep down, she wanted me there. But Sarah didn't. Neither did Michael. And the worst part? They thought they could decide that without even saying it plainly. No confrontation, just quiet removal. You'll just slow us down. That was all I got, as if I were luggage. I picked up my planner from the counter, flipped to Friday, scribbled over departure day with a black marker until the page tore. Then I made tea. You see, when you're 77 and people treat you like you've expired, you have two choices: shrink into the background, or remind them that age and silence are not the same thing. I chose the second. The next morning, I called the retirement home Sarah mentioned. Just for the weekend, she said. You'll be so comfortable there. They had a room ready, paid in full already. The daughter insisted on booking early, the receptionist chirped. I thanked her, then asked if she could fax me the invoice. When it arrived, I smiled. My credit card again, not Sarah's, not Michael's. Mine. That afternoon, I called my banker, Mr. Lawson, same man who helped me manage the funds after George passed, a kind man with soft diction and a good memory. Mrs. Blake, he said warmly, how can I help? I'd like to suspend all shared access to my accounts, I said evenly. He was silent for a beat. Of course. Shall I ask the reason? Yes, I said. My family has decided I'm no longer essential. He didn't ask more. While he worked, I opened my email again. The flights were changeable. I'd paid extra for that. I clicked Modify Reservation. Then I began to type in a different destination. I rerouted them to Denver. Not that there's anything wrong with Denver. I've heard the mountains are lovely, but it wasn't Florence, and it certainly wasn't Italy in spring. The airline rep on the phone was courteous. Are you sure, ma'am? He asked twice. I assured him I was. I paid the change fees myself. Still my card, still my name. I kept the confirmation email brief and factual. The flights to Florence were canceled. New tickets issued. Departure time and gate changed. Final destination, Denver International. No return flight. I made no calls, sent no texts, just a silent correction to the narrative they'd written without me. Then I turned back to my own plans. With the family safely detoured, I now had space to think clearly. I brewed a pot of real tea, not the green stuff Sarah always pushes on me, and took it out to the back porch. I hadn't sat out there in months. It was just me, the robin that nested near the garage, and a quiet that wasn't empty, but full of memory, full of resolve. By late afternoon, I had a list, close all automatic payments tied to Sarah and Michael. Cancel the room at the senior retreat, transfer funds to a private account, change my will, book a ticket, for myself, not to Denver. My banker called me back within the hour. Access is revoked, Mrs. Blake, and I've scheduled the attorney meeting for Monday. Do you want me to notify your daughter of these changes? No, I said. Let them find out like I did, without warning. He paused. Understood. There was a time I would have cried, not out of guilt, but out of that deep, familiar ache we carry as mothers. The ache that tells us we've failed when our children turn cold. But the truth is, I hadn't failed. I'd shown up. Again and again. Through every storm, bill, emergency. And I had done it with love. They were the ones who left the table early, who forgot who kept the lights on. That night, I walked through my house like it was the first time. I touched the banister that George built. Opened drawers where Sarah's drawings still lived, folded neatly. I found the necklace I wore to her wedding, the earrings from the day Olivia was born. I packed them all into a small case. It felt like closing a chapter. I didn't sleep much. I wasn't tired. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror in my hallway and looked at the woman staring back. Silver hair pulled into a soft knot. The blue dress with the buttons she liked. Same quiet face. Same steady eyes. But something had shifted. I walked to the bureau and pulled out my passport. My passport hadn't been touched in 8 years. I ran a hand across its cover, tracing the faded gold emblem. Inside, my last stamp was from Vancouver, a cruise Sarah didn't want me to go on because it might be too chilly for your joints. I had gone anyway, and I'd loved every damp, misty hour of it. I placed it on the table beside my tea and pulled out my laptop. Flights from New York to Florence, 1 passenger, flexible dates. I didn't want layovers. I didn't want overnight hellscapes. I wanted something decent, dignified. A seat where I didn't need to prove I still had value. Business class. I clicked through options. The price startled me for a moment, but then I thought about what I'd spent on others. I remembered Olivia's braces, $4,000. The down payment on their second car, $6,000. The remodeled kitchen, $15,000. All of it paid for with the casual cruelty of convenience. You're such a help, Mom. Now it was my turn to help myself. I chose a flight 2 days after theirs. Well, after what used to be theirs. It gave me time to prepare, to breathe. I picked my seat, a window, and smiled at the words, "Lie flat bed included." Imagine that. I could nap on my way to Florence, like a person whose presence wasn't a burden. I clicked purchase. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. "Hey, just checking in. We're finalizing packing. Let me know if you want me to bring your medication organizer so you'll have it at the center." The center? Like I was being deposited somewhere to be held for safekeeping, like luggage in storage. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the invoice for the villa in Florence. My name again. I'd paid the deposit. The rest was due the day of arrival. I contacted the property directly and canceled the booking. Full refund issued to my card. No questions asked. After that, I called the rental car agency. Canceled. Then the museum tours. Canceled. The driver pickup from the airport. Gone. They'd land in Denver with nothing but confusion and a rental Kia they hadn't reserved. As for me, I was going to a quiet hotel near the Arno. Not too fancy. Not too crowded. Run by an old couple whose daughter was a piano teacher. I liked the sound of that. Then I called the senior home and spoke to the same woman Sarah had booked with. "Mrs. Blake, we're looking forward to welcoming you Friday," she said. "No, you won't be," I replied. "Please cancel the reservation." "Oh, but your daughter insisted." "My daughter doesn't speak for me." She hesitated. "There will be a cancellation fee." I didn't care. I asked for the invoice again. She sent it while I was still on the line. The fee was minimal. I paid it and closed the tab. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the family photo from last Christmas. All of us crammed onto the couch, half smiles, stiff shoulders. Sarah had said, "Let's get one good shot for the wall." But I remembered Olivia's eye roll, Noah on his phone, Michael checking his watch. I wasn't in the center of the frame. I was on the edge, barely visible. I turned the photo face down. Then I went to pack. I didn't own fancy luggage, just an old navy suitcase with a fraying zipper and wheels that squeaked when I turned corners. It had been George's, from the days when people still traveled with modesty. One bag, no compartments for shoes or steamers or collapsible garment racks. I wheeled it into the bedroom, laid it flat on the bed, and started folding. 2 blouses, 1 linen dress, comfortable walking shoes, my cardigan with the pearl buttons, the silk scarf Sarah never liked. "It makes you look old," she'd once said, as if age was something I could hide behind a brighter color. This time, I packed it proudly. The jewelry box came last. I didn't take everything, just the pieces that meant something. The ring George gave me on our 10th anniversary, the watch he had engraved, a single pair of earrings from my mother. Simple things. Real things. I left my phone charging by the bed and didn't check it again that night. By morning, I had 3 voicemails. One from Sarah, one from Michael, and one from the retirement home receptionist, all cheerful and oblivious. I didn't return any of them. Instead, I walked to the bank. Mr. Lawson met me in a small glass room near the back. He wore the same tweed jacket as always, and his handshake was firm. "We've revoked the power of attorney your daughter had. All automatic transfers have been frozen as well." I nodded. "We can also set up a trust if you'd like. Something just for you, or someone you choose." I already knew who. "My granddaughter," I said. "Olivia Reynolds. But not now. Later. I want to be sure first." "Of course," he said gently. "We'll make it flexible." We reviewed the documents together. The paper trail was longer than I'd expected. So many entries labeled family assistance, education support, medical coverage. So many withdrawals made with the assumption I'd never notice, or if I did, I wouldn't object. He placed the last folder in front of me. "This is your full financial profile. Every payment related to your daughter and her family is highlighted." I took my time. The list went on for 11 pages. Gym memberships, streaming subscriptions, a catered birthday party, flights to Miami for a work conference that overlapped perfectly with spring break. Even the new espresso machine they'd proudly shown me, billed to my account. "They must have thought I'd die before noticing," I murmured. Mr. Lawson didn't reply. I signed the revocation documents with a steady hand. When we finished, I thanked him and walked the long way home, through the park, past the bakery George used to love. There were early tulips blooming, pale yellow and white. The kind Sarah used to pick when she was little and bring to me, crushed in her fist like treasure. That little girl was gone now, and the woman who replaced her only remembered my usefulness. I stopped by the post office and bought a pack of stationery. Thick, cream-colored sheets with matching envelopes. I didn't plan to write anything yet, but I wanted to have the option. If someday Olivia asked questions, she'd get answers, not bitterness, just the truth. Back home, I called the lawyer. Francine Shaw was sharp as a nail and twice as fast. She'd helped with George's estate after he passed and knew how to keep things clean. "I need to update my will," I told her. "Remove certain beneficiaries, redirect the estate." She didn't ask why, just gave me a time. Friday morning, 9 a.m. That would be after they landed in Denver. I smiled at the thought, imagined Sarah's face when she saw the gate sign. Denver, Colorado. Imagined Michael trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Olivia texting me in confusion. Noah, too, distracted to care. They would call, and I wouldn't answer. Not out of cruelty, but out of long overdue self-respect. For the first time in decades, I wasn't going to be the one fixing what they broke. The night before their departure, Sarah sent me a cheerful group photo. Olivia holding her neck pillow, Noah with his hood up, Michael beaming like a man about to take credit for something he didn't pay for. "We'll text from JFK," the caption read. Underneath, a line from Sarah. Have a peaceful weekend, Mom. They'll take good care of you at Rosehaven. Rosehaven. The euphemism wrapped in flowers. I stared at the screen for a moment, then powered the phone off and slid it into a drawer. Let them enjoy the silence. That night I barely slept. Not from nerves, but from the quiet hum of anticipation. Like something in me had reawakened, stretched its limbs after years of hibernation. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. Just a steady, clear feeling. I was finally on my own side. By 7 a.m. the next morning, they were at the airport. I know because I checked the airline tracker from my laptop. Their flight boarded on time, but the destination had changed. Florence was gone, in its place. Flight 262, Gate 34B, departing to Denver. I sipped my tea and waited. They'd notice. They'd have questions. Let them. At 7:45, the plane took off. At 8:03, my phone, temporarily turned back on, began vibrating like a trapped insect. 1 call, 2, then 4. Voicemails. Messages. The first came from Michael. Martha, there's been a mistake. We're on the wrong flight. Denver? Did you touch the bookings? Then Sarah. Mom, what's going on? This isn't funny. Call me back now. I let it ring. Then I powered it off again and left it on the kitchen counter. If they'd slowed down long enough to ask, I might have told them the truth. That I'd been watching them forget me piece by piece. That I wasn't angry. Not really. Just done. But they didn't ask. They packed up, smiled for selfies, and flew off thinking I'd wait in a retirement center like a forgotten coat on a hook. I didn't. Instead, I took a cab to the lawyer's office. Francine greeted me with her usual briskness. You ready? More than. We reviewed everything line by line. The changes were simple, but the meaning behind them was not. I revoked Sarah and Michael's inheritance, a sizable sum, the result of decades of careful planning, saved from a modest life and steady hands. It would no longer pass to them automatically. Instead, I left a letter of instruction. Olivia would receive the trust, but only after a private conversation with me. I wasn't punishing anyone. I just didn't owe anyone silence anymore. Francine slid the last document toward me. This one finalizes the update. I signed it. And just like that, the last obligation unraveled. When I walked out into the morning light, I didn't feel righteous. I felt real. It was nearly noon when I got home. The suitcase stood by the door, packed and zipped. My passport was in my handbag. The flight was in 12 hours. A car would take me to the airport at 8:30 p.m. Plenty of time. I made a sandwich, watered my violets, folded the blanket on the couch. There's a strange calm that comes when you stop trying to prove your worth. They were in Denver now. That much I knew. Probably shouting at airline reps, demanding answers, spinning lies. I hoped they found good food. I hoped they used the time to think. But I didn't hope too hard. At 6:00 p.m., I put on my shoes, the soft leather ones I'd saved for the trip. Then I picked up my handbag, checked the lock on the front door, and stepped outside. Not as someone being sent somewhere, but as someone going by choice. The airport was quiet by the time I arrived. Late evening flights tend to attract fewer crowds, fewer cries from overtired children, fewer businessmen pacing with phones pressed to their ears. Just the hum of movement, like a city breathing in sleep. My driver, a polite young man named Alex, didn't ask questions when he saw the destination. He took my bag from the trunk, wished me a pleasant trip, and drove away. No fanfare, no tears, just a woman and her suitcase and a boarding pass to Florence. I checked in without issue. My seat, 3A, was waiting for me. When I passed through security, I saw something that stopped me cold. A young woman, maybe 30, helping her mother, an older woman with a cane, put her shoes back on. They were laughing about something, giggling like girls. The daughter tied her mother's scarf for her, and the mother touched her hand as if that was all she needed. They weren't loud. They weren't dramatic. They were simply together. I watched them until they disappeared down the terminal. My gate was farther down. I walked slowly, not out of weakness, but because I wanted to take it in. The strange, delicious novelty of traveling not to be useful or presentable or out of the way, but simply because I wanted to. No schedule. No luggage full of kids' snacks and wet wipes. No second guessing. At the gate, I ordered a cup of coffee and took a seat near the window. Somewhere across the country, Sarah and Michael were probably checking into a hotel under assumed names, hoping the kids didn't start asking too many questions. Olivia would be piecing things together by now. She wasn't a fool. Noah might not care, but Olivia, she'd remember. I pulled out a small notebook from my bag and wrote just one line. I may walk slowly, but I don't wait to be invited anymore. At boarding time, the agent smiled when she scanned my ticket. Enjoy your flight, Ms. Blake, she said. I nodded. I intend to. My seat was wide and soft, with a blanket folded neatly and a real pillow, not one of those limp airline ones. A flight attendant brought orange juice before takeoff and addressed me with a respect I hadn't realized I'd missed. Would you like assistance with your bag? She asked. No, thank you, I said. I stowed it myself. When we took off, I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just breathed. Deeply. Fully. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I reclined my seat, pulled the blanket over my legs, and looked out the window. The ocean was invisible, but I imagined it there, dark and constant. Like the weight of every yes I'd ever given to people who treated my kindness like currency. Let them wonder where I went. Let them tell whatever story makes them feel better. I wasn't running. I was arriving. I landed in Florence at 10:42 a.m. local time. Sunlight poured through the terminal windows, warm and yellow, like something poured from a kettle. I stepped off the plane and felt the weight of the air, thick with the scent of stone and trees and something older than both. The customs agent barely looked up as he stamped my passport. Buongiorno, he mumbled. I smiled, said it back. The taxi stand was organized chaos. Drivers waving cardboard signs, tourists pointing at printed maps, luggage carts clattering over the curb. But I wasn't in a hurry. I walked slowly, letting the others rush past me. My driver's name was Massimo. He didn't speak much English, and I didn't speak much Italian, but when I said the name of my hotel, he grinned and nodded. Ah, Via della Rosa. Si, molto bene. The car ride was quiet. Olive trees passed by the window, their silver-green leaves shivering in the breeze. I saw laundry hanging from balconies, scooters zigzagging through traffic, a boy with a violin case crossing the street without looking. It was all exactly what I wanted, real, unrushed, mine. The hotel was small, nestled between a church and an old bookstore. A wrought iron sign swung above the door. Pensione Fiorita. A woman in her 60s greeted me at the desk. You must be Mrs. Blake, she said in soft English. Welcome. Your room is ready. It was on the second floor. No elevator, but I didn't mind. She offered to carry my bag. I declined. The room was simple. Whitewashed walls, lace curtains, a wooden writing desk facing the window. No television, no minibar, just silence, broken only by the hum of street life below and the occasional church bell. I opened the shutters and looked out. Florence. Red roofs, distant domes, narrow cobblestone streets, and air that smelled faintly of citrus and warm stone. I unpacked slowly, placing my things into drawers as if I were moving in for longer than a week. Then I changed into my linen blouse, tied my scarf, the one Sarah hated, and stepped outside. I had no plan, no itinerary, no museum tickets, no tours, just time. I walked for hours. I wandered past the Duomo, towering and impossible. Sat on a bench near the Arno and watched couples hold hands like teenagers. Bought a small sandwich from a man with a crooked smile who insisted on giving me extra tomatoes. I paid in cash. No apps, no splitting checks, no arguments. By afternoon, my feet ached. I found a cafe and ordered a coffee. Real coffee. Thick and hot and served without milk unless you begged. The table beside me held 3 American tourists arguing over bus schedules. One of them said something that made me pause. My mom would have loved this place, but we didn't bring her. She slows things down. I sipped my espresso and stared into the cup. Let them rush. Let them check their watches and cut things short and worry about pace. I would walk slowly, but I'd see everything. The second morning in Florence began with silence. The kind you only find in unfamiliar places. No dishwasher hum, no cars in the driveway, no hallway footsteps. Just the sound of birds arguing in the tree outside my window and the occasional distant clink of a teacup in someone else's breakfast. I sat at the small desk, brushing my hair, when the church bell rang 7 times. 7 a.m. No rush, no calls, no responsibilities, just me. Downstairs in the dining room, a soft-spoken woman named Julia brought fresh bread, apricot jam, and coffee so strong it could have walked across the table on its own. She asked if I'd like eggs. I said yes. No one corrected my cholesterol. No one fussed. After breakfast, I walked to the Uffizi. Not to go in, not yet. Just to stand outside and watch the line form. Families, young couples, retired travelers in matching sun hats, all planning, hurrying, ticking boxes off itineraries. I sat on a nearby bench and watched a young woman take a photo of her grandmother with a bronze statue. The old woman was laughing, her teeth imperfect, her lipstick slightly crooked. I found myself smiling before I realized it. Maybe I used to laugh like that once. I took out my notebook and wrote, "Some of us weren't brought here by others. Some of us brought ourselves." The rest of the morning passed in quiet observation. Fruit markets, street artists, accordion music floating from a distant square. I didn't try to capture it all. I didn't need to. Some things live better in memory than in photos. By noon, I returned to the hotel for a nap. Not out of exhaustion, but because I could. The bed was soft, and the breeze through the curtains was gentle, like a hand brushing hair from your forehead. When I woke, there were messages on my phone. I'd turned it on just once to check the time and forgot to switch it back off. 7 texts from Sarah, 2 from Michael. 1 missed call from a number I didn't recognize. They had discovered Denver. The first message was from Sarah. "Mom, what is going on? Why are we in Denver? This has to be a mistake. Please call me back. We're trying to fix this." The second came 30 minutes later. "You changed the flights. I know it. That's insane. I don't even know what to say to the kids. Are you okay?" Then, "We used your card for the hotel here. They said it's declined. We're stranded, Mom. Seriously, this isn't funny." Michael's messages were more restrained. We need to talk. Please pick up. The kids are getting upset. Sarah's panicking. What do you want from us? I read them all once. Then I deleted them, not out of malice, not even out of satisfaction, just because I didn't owe them my reaction. The story had changed, and I wasn't a character they could narrate anymore. Later that day, I walked along the Ponte Vecchio and bought a silver bracelet. Nothing flashy, just a thin band with a single word etched inside. Quiet. I liked that. That evening, I dined alone in a trattoria tucked behind a chapel. The waiter didn't ask where the rest of my party was. He brought wine without judgment, lasagna with a crisp edge, dessert without suggestion. I didn't scroll my phone, didn't rush. When I returned to the hotel, a message was waiting from Olivia. Not angry, not dramatic, just, "Grandma, please tell me where you are. I think I know. I hope I'm right. I miss you." I didn't answer yet, but I didn't delete it either. By day 3, Florence began to feel less like a destination and more like a place I belonged to. Not in the way tourists claim ownership over postcards and gelato shops, but quietly. Like someone who passed through without demanding to be seen. I stopped carrying a map. I started recognizing faces. The man who sold roasted chestnuts near the church. The child who walked the same 3-legged dog every morning. Julia at the hotel who always asked, "Sleep well?" Like she meant it. I'd forgotten what it was like to be somewhere without being managed. At home, even when I wasn't needed, I was expected. To be useful. To be supportive. To be quiet. Here, I didn't have to be anything but a woman who ordered coffee and strolled. But peace is a strange thing. It calls up thoughts you've kept buried. Like the moment George died. Too sudden. Too quiet. Sarah was 30 then. She cried for a day and then started organizing everything like she was trying to beat the grief to a finish line. I remember holding my tea with both hands because I didn't trust my fingers not to shake. Since then, I'd filled the hole he left with motion, help, money, logistics. I'd turned myself into infrastructure, invisible but critical. And when people forget the beams holding the roof, they let it leak. Or worse, they sell the house without asking who built it. That afternoon, I finally responded to Olivia. "I'm safe. I'm traveling. That's all you need to know right now." She replied in minutes. "Did you really send them to Denver?" "Yes." There was a pause, a long one this time. Then, I laughed when I found out. I shouldn't have, but I did. I stared at the message for a while, then typed, "Laughter's better than silence." She didn't reply after that, but I didn't need her to. Some conversations echo longer than words. That night, I received an email from the bank, confirmation of canceled transfers, and a note from Mr. Lawson. "All access is now restricted to you only. Shall we proceed with the trust setup next week?" I clicked, reply. Yes, and I'd like Olivia to be the sole beneficiary, with clear provisions. I'll call to finalize. Then I wrote another email. This one was harder. It was to Sarah. I kept it short. Subject: Your mother. Sarah, I know by now you've realized what I did. Yes, I changed your flights. Yes, I canceled the payments. Yes, I turned off my phone. You told me I'd slow you down. And maybe you were right. But here's what you didn't understand. I didn't need to be fast. I needed to be seen. And you haven't seen me in a very long time. This trip wasn't punishment. It was freedom. For both of us. I'll return when I'm ready. Mom, I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I saved it as a draft. Some truths need to age a little before they're served. And in the meantime, I had an early ticket to Siena. I packed light. Just the scarf, my notebook, and the bracelet that said, "Quiet. Let Sarah refresh 100 times." I was already gone. Siena was quieter than Florence, tucked into hills like it had something to hide. I arrived mid-morning on a local train and took my time walking from the station, suitcase bumping behind me, the wheels catching slightly on uneven stone. I didn't mind. I liked the feel of the resistance. The hotel was a converted monastery. Whitewashed walls, a courtyard with ivy, and windows that framed the sky like a painting. No luxury, but I wasn't after that. I didn't come to Italy to be pampered. I came to remember how to be alone without being lonely. The clerk handed me a brass key, an actual key, not a card, and smiled. "Silenzio dopo 10," he said, tapping a small wooden sign behind him. "Silence after 10." "Perfect," I answered. My room was simple. A narrow bed, a desk, a small balcony that overlooked the courtyard. I unpacked slowly, then sat on the edge of the bed and opened my notebook. I'd been writing small pieces of truth each day. One line per page. Kindness without boundaries becomes a transaction. A woman doesn't lose value when her family stops calling. Sometimes dignity sounds like silence. This time I wrote, "You don't have to burn bridges. Just stop crossing them." I placed the notebook in the drawer beside the bed, then went out into the day. The city was like a whisper. Narrow alleys, bells echoing from towers, children running with gelato smeared across their faces. I wandered through the market and bought peaches from a woman who reminded me of my mother. Same no-nonsense eyebrows, same powerful silence. We didn't speak a word of the same language, but she gave me an extra peach. In the Piazza del Campo, I sat on the steps and watched people pose for photos, lovers kiss without shame, old men argue about football. I thought of George. How he would have loved the square, the architecture, the wine. He would have raised his glass to the sky and said, "We made it, babe." Well, I made it. That night, I opened my phone again. One message stood out. "Olivia, Grandma, I know you're probably still mad, but I get it now. I really do. It's been chaos here. I'm the only one asking questions. No one else wants to talk about it. I miss you. I wish you'd tell me where you are." Another pause. Then, "Can I come to you? Even just for a day?" I stared at the screen a long time. She didn't owe me that, and I didn't owe her forgiveness. Not instantly, not just because she wasn't as bad as the others. But something in her tone wasn't about guilt. It was about care. And she was the only one who hadn't asked for money. I typed slowly. "I'm in Siena. Small hotel near the cathedral. Room 14. Come if you want. But only if you come as my granddaughter, not as a mediator." Her reply came 2 minutes later. "Train leaves Florence at 8:20 a.m. I'll be there before 10. I'll bring the peaches." I didn't smile, but I set a second cup out on the windowsill, just in case. She arrived at 9:52. I watched her from the small balcony as she stepped into the courtyard, backpack slung over one shoulder, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, a canvas tote bag in her hand. She looked older than the last time I'd really seen her, not just in age, but in a way that comes from disappointment. I recognized it. I'd worn that look for years. She spotted me and waved. I didn't wave back. I just nodded. A moment later, she was knocking softly at my door. When I opened it, she didn't rush to hug me. That was the first good sign. No performance, no forced affection. Just a quiet, "Hi, Grandma." "Come in." She did. Looked around. "This place is peaceful." "It is." She set the tote down and pulled out 2 peaches. They're not as good as the ones you used to slice into cereal, but they smelled nice at the market. I took them. Thank you. We sat near the window. No tea, no coffee, no attempts to soften the moment with pleasantries. I didn't come to defend them, she said after a while. I want to make that clear. I nodded. I know. They're acting like you set the house on fire. They treated me like furniture. I removed myself from the room. She looked down at her hands. They were the same shape as Sarah's, but more deliberate, less performative. I tried to talk to Mom. She's spinning, keeps saying it was a misunderstanding, that you're overreacting. I raised an eyebrow. Removing someone from a trip they paid for isn't subtle. I know, she sighed. I think they didn't expect you to do anything. You've always just taken it. Yes, I had. For far too long. Are you angry with me? She asked. No. Not even for staying quiet when they planned it all? I didn't know they changed your ticket, but I didn't stop them either. I didn't ask enough questions. You were young, I said. You still are. That's not an excuse. No, but it's a reason. We sat in silence again. The kind of silence that doesn't demand filling. I read something once, she said finally, that said we inherit our parents' fears unless we choose otherwise. I think Mom's afraid of needing you, or maybe of becoming you. She should be so lucky, I said. That made her smile. Not a big one, just a small tug at the corner of her mouth. Honest. After a while, she pulled out a small envelope and placed it on the table. What's this? Something I wrote on the train. You can read it later. I didn't open it. She stayed for a few hours. We walked to the same market I'd visited the day before, bought bread, shared a quiet lunch in the courtyard. No confessions, no long emotional declarations, just small, ordinary kindnesses. And when it was time for her to leave, she hugged me. This time not hesitantly, but gently, like someone reaching for something precious. Thank you for letting me come. Thank you for coming as yourself. She nodded, eyes glassy but unbroken. You don't need me to say I love you. You already know. I do. When she left, I watched her walk back to the station. Tall, steady, not looking back. Only after the train disappeared down the tracks did I open the envelope. Inside was a short note. Grandma, you were always the strongest person in the room. I just didn't see it until you left the room. If you decide never to come back, I'll understand. But if you ever want someone to sit beside you in silence again, I'm here. Love, Olivia. I folded it neatly and placed it in my notebook, next to the line I'd written the night before. Sometimes the only apology that matters is presence. Then I picked up the second peach and ate it slowly. The next morning, I woke before the bells. The sun was only beginning to stretch across the rooftops, and the courtyard below was still wrapped in the hush of early light. I boiled water for tea, opened the shutters, and sat by the window, notebook in my lap, pen uncapped. I'd written dozens of one-line truths in those pages. Some were sharp, some were soft, some I didn't yet understand. But today, the page stayed blank for a long time. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was just still. Eventually, I wrote, "It takes courage to stop waiting to be wanted." Then I closed the notebook and looked out toward the hills. Sienna had grown familiar, not like home, but like a place that accepted my presence without requiring explanation. No one here needed me to be young, useful, or invisible. I could just be. I stayed one more day. Long enough to sit in the cathedral in silence, long enough to buy a small ceramic dish for the violets I'd left behind, long enough to walk the same alley twice, once as a stranger, once as someone who remembered. And then I packed. Back in Florence, the station was as chaotic as ever. I stayed overnight at a different hotel, near the river this time, and watched the lights ripple across the water. I didn't check the news, didn't call home, didn't scroll. But in the morning, I turned on my phone and found one voicemail. From Sarah. Just her voice made something in my stomach tighten. Not fear, not even pain. Just the weight of memory. "Mom," she began, and already her tone was brittle. "We're back. Olivia told me she saw you, that you're okay, that you look strong." A pause. "We've been talking a lot, Michael and I. I won't pretend we understand everything you did, but we know we messed up. I don't know how to explain how we got here, how we stopped seeing you. Maybe we never really did." Another pause. A breath. "If you don't want to speak to us again, I'll understand. I'll regret it, but I'll understand." Silence. "I just hope, someday, you'll let us try again." Click. No apology. Just regret framed as understanding. But even that was more than I expected. I didn't delete it. I didn't return the call either. Instead, I packed the last of my things and headed for the airport. My flight home was uneventful. No delays, no drama. The same window seat, the same soft blanket. Somewhere over the ocean, I looked out and whispered, "Thank you." Though I didn't know to whom. The sky, perhaps. Myself. Landing felt different this time. I wasn't returning as someone who had run away. I was arriving as someone who had stepped back in on her own terms. Back in my little house, everything was just as I'd left it. The violets were wilted, the air a bit musty, but nothing out of place. I opened the windows, brewed tea, and set the ceramic dish from Sienna on the windowsill. The house didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like mine. I checked the mailbox. One letter from the bank confirming the trust. One small envelope from Olivia. A pressed flower tucked inside with no note. It said everything. No letters from Sarah. No visits. Not yet. That night, I sat by the lamp and reread my notebook. At the bottom of the last page, I wrote, "You don't need permission to become the person you were before they needed you." Then I turned the page and found it blank. Not an ending, just space. Weeks passed. The phone stayed mostly quiet. A few polite check-ins from Mr. Lawson, a thank you card from the couple who ran the pension in Florence, and a single text from Olivia every Sunday. Just one sentence, never questions. "Hope your violets are blooming. I bought peaches today and thought of you." I'm learning to say no, finally. I didn't always reply, but I always read them twice. The days settled into rhythm. Slow mornings, long walks, letters I wrote and never mailed. I began sorting old photos, not with nostalgia, but with clarity. Some I kept, some I put away, some I threw out without ceremony, just because they no longer held anything true. Then, one Thursday, there was a knock on the door. Soft, hesitant. I opened it, and Sarah stood there. No makeup, no script, no flowers. She held nothing, just herself. For a long moment, we stood in the doorway looking at each other. Her face was thinner than I remembered, tired. But her eyes, those hadn't changed. Still searching, still guarded, still carrying the question she never learned to ask out loud. I didn't invite her in. She didn't ask. "I'm not here to explain anything," she said. "I think that would just make it worse." I said nothing. "I came because I realized I don't know who you are anymore, and I want to know, if you'll let me." Still, I didn't move. She waited, swallowed. "If not today, that's okay." I stepped out onto the porch and sat down on the bench. She followed. We sat like that for a while, side by side, not close, not distant. Just two women with shared blood and long shadows between them. I reread every message I sent you, she said. Every time I dismissed you. Every time I turned your help into a transaction. I don't have a defense. I only have awareness, and it came too late. I let her speak. You were right to walk away, right to protect yourself. I know I didn't say the words. I didn't even think the words. But you were slowing us down. That's what we believed. And I'm ashamed of that. I don't know how we got there. I just know I didn't stop it. The wind stirred the leaves beside the porch. And I didn't think you'd actually leave, she added. That, more than anything, was the truth. They never expected I'd stop saying yes. I finally spoke. I didn't leave to teach you a lesson, Sarah. She looked at me. I left because I couldn't be what you refused to see. She nodded slowly. I think I'm starting to understand that. I hope so. I don't expect anything from you. I don't need money or help. I just want, I don't know, to be your daughter again, if that's still possible. It was a hard sentence, not because it was untrue, but because it arrived too late to fix everything, and just in time to mean something. We sat there a little longer, and eventually I said, "Come in, there's tea." She followed me inside, not as the woman who expected me to serve her, but as someone who remembered I was more than a role. She didn't touch her tea right away. It sat between us on the kitchen table, steam curling upward like a quiet offering. She kept her hands folded in her lap, like a child waiting for permission. And for once, she didn't fill the silence with questions or plans or justifications. That was enough. We talked, not about Italy, not about flights or canceled bookings or who did what when, just about now. The violets on the windowsill, Olivia's messages, the weather, the new grocery store down on 4th. Simple, ordinary things that used to feel heavy, now weightless. When she finally did sip the tea, she winced. "You still brew it strong," she said. "I don't water down what matters." She smiled at that. Small, earnest, not a performance, but the shape of someone remembering how. When she left, she didn't ask if she could come again, and I didn't offer. But the door closed gently behind her, not like the end of something, just a pause. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the same spot where I'd once felt like an afterthought in my own home. The photo on the mantel was gone now. The one with all of us squeezed onto the couch, half smiling for appearances. In its place, the ceramic dish from Siena and a folded piece of stationery with Olivia's flower still pressed inside. I opened my notebook, the last page, and I wrote, "Freedom isn't loud. It's quiet enough to hear yourself think again." The house didn't feel small anymore. It felt full, of breath, of memory, of space reclaimed. I had no grand plans, no list of demands, just a slow, steady sense of wholeness returning, like something misplaced and finally found beneath the noise. They'll tell their version of the story. Let them. They'll say I snapped or rebelled or ran off to make a point. But those who know will understand. I didn't snap. I returned. To myself. To dignity. To silence that isn't punishment, but peace. I may walk slowly, but I no longer wait to be invited. If this story found you at the right time, share it. With someone who's tired of being invisible, with someone who needs to hear. You're not wrong to stop shrinking. You're not selfish for choosing yourself. Leave a comment if you've ever felt like her, or like me. We're not done speaking, not yet.